Let me start this review off by saying I have never owned or played anything GameCube related up until now in my life. I was always a PlayStation kid growing up, and given my parents couldn't afford to buy me every single console in existence, I was never introduced to anything Nintendo related until I got my first DS in the mid-2000s. Characters like Mario, Kirby, and Zelda were often the talk of the playground, at least for the boys, and I could tell the games they featured in meant a lot to the lads who would go on and on about them, but I had no idea who they even were. There was me at the tender age of 5 or 6, level skipping through Tomb Raider in order to face off against a giant swollen testicle with arms and a head, but all the boys were going on about was fighting an angry spiky turtle and a piece of gammon or something. And I didn't dare ask what they were on about because 1, I was an incredibly shy kid, and 2, I couldn't just walk up to a bunch of boys and start talking to them. That's playground taboo. The older I got, the more I learned about these series and their characters, of course, but at the same time, the less interested I became in ever playing them. I saw these series as games for babies, with their bright colours and adorable characters. And given I was an incredibly edgy teen who thought hating stuff everybody else liked made me cool, I decided I would never give these games a chance. But here I am at the ripe old age of 27, and when you get to this point in your life you think, I've got nothing better to do. Now, I knew I had to try at least something Mario related before I got hit by a bus or eaten by the wild hippos that you all think live in my back garden. But I could never decide which to play. It was only when Luigi's Mansion 3 got announced and subsequently released that I thought, yeah, I could give the original a go. I like cute, spooky games after all, and people have nothing but good things to say about Luigi and his escapades through a haunted mansion, so why not? And I'm so glad I did give it a go, because this is hands down one of the best games I've experienced in a very long time. So much so, I spent most of my Luigi's Mansion livestream reiterating just how much I enjoyed playing it, and even finished off collecting the 50 boos in my own time. Everything about this game is so charming and wacky and hilarious that I couldn't help but have a big cheesy grin on my face throughout my time playing it. It's not without its faults, of course, no game is, and I will be mentioning them as the video goes on. But for those sharpening their pitchforks, don't worry, this game is top-notch in my book. The premise for Luigi's Mansion is fairly simple. The titular hero receives a letter one day telling him he's won a mansion. He never entered a contest in order to do so, but apparently doesn't question it any further, as he and older brother Mario agree to meet outside the mansion later that evening. Luigi arrives and enters the mansion, but finds no sign of Mario. Shortly after, he's attacked by a ghost, but is saved by Professor Gadd and his trusty vacuum cleaner, and the two escape back to Gadd's lab. He explains to Luigi that the mansion didn't actually exist a few days prior, having been conjured up in its spot by the ghosts themselves. Gadd learns that Luigi is Mario's brother and entrusts the vacuum cleaner, aptly named the Poltergust 3000, to the titular hero so that he may rescue his sibling and capture the ghost that Gadd had originally locked up inside the paintings of his famous ghost collection. And that's where the game throws you in. You get a tutorial to teach you the basics of using the Poltergust 3000, a task which would have been much simpler from the get-go had I remembered what I had mapped the GameCube controller buttons to on my Xbox Windows controller.
Oh, no, I don't get it. What? Leave me alone!
Luckily, the control scheme for this game is fairly simple. The left analog stick moves Luigi while the right analog stick turns him. The R button is used to power the vacuum. The B button turns the flashlight off when held. A is used to interact with and hump every door and object Luigi comes across.
Why would I do that? No, where you going, you little shit? I looked away for a second, you went, okay, we're leaving now.
And later on, the L button is used to shoot out various elements: fire, water, and ice. You also have access to a simple and easy to understand map by hitting Y, something I'm incredibly grateful for because map reading isn't one of my strong points. It sounds stupid, I know, but when nearly every other map I experience in a game has to be accessed with a long fade in and out, is too large to see as a whole, or has far too much information for someone like me to retain, I'm going to be appreciative for one that can not only be opened fairly quickly to account for the 14 times I need to check it in the space of 1 minute, but also situates everything in one easy to read screen with no unnecessary information. It's just Luigi's current location, the layout of the floor he's on, and various locked or unlocked doors, with a flick of the left analog stick moving the map screen to a higher or lower floor. It is a simple and we like it. The final item in Luigi's arsenal is the Game Boy Horror, ha ha. Whilst it doesn't have a lot of use at first, only used as a means of communication between Luigi and Gadd, it proves invaluable later on when you'll be hunting down the various boos scattered about the mansion. I'll go into more detail about that later on. So, the goal of Luigi's Mansion is simple: find Mario and suck up any ghosts that get in your way. In order to complete this task, you'll need to visit as many rooms as possible, but the game doesn't throw everything at you all at once. Most rooms are locked off until you find the relevant keys, which are usually given to you once you clear a room of generic ghosts or suck up one of Gadd's portrait ghosts. You can even find them in odd places such as the inside of a toilet bowl.
This is way too gross. Who would even think of doing something so disgusting?
Oh yeah.
Luckily, there's no guesswork when it comes to finding out which door the key unlocks, as the map will helpfully inform you of which room to visit next with a key icon above its door. Occasionally, you'll need to do more than just defeat a bunch of ghosts, however. Some rooms require you to perform a certain action, or series of actions, in order to complete said room and obtain the next key. Some actions are fairly obvious, or at least they would be if I wasn't a moron, and include tasks such as blowing out purple candles with a vacuum in the parlour. Other rooms are more cryptic, though nothing in this game is so impossibly difficult that its intended audience would struggle. This is another thing I love about Luigi's Mansion. While there are moments you'll be left scratching your head as you try to work out a puzzle or a means of attack on certain enemies, it's not so convoluted or far-fetched that you'll feel cheated by the game. In fact, when I did finally manage to work out what to do in a particular room, I couldn't believe how blatantly obvious it was. A great example of this is the storage room. At first it's not clear what you have to do. You need to defeat the ghosts, yes, but once you've done so, nothing else seems to happen. And this is where those with a natural curiosity and a keen eye are rewarded.
Oh, that's so clever! Oh, that's so cool! So you can't see the button unless you're looking in the mirror, like as in you can't see it from the angle you're at. Oh, I love that, that's so clever.
Interaction is a major part of Luigi's Mansion and is key to progressing through the game. Even minute little details you wouldn't consider, such as running on a treadmill, reward you with items to access later areas. It's the reason Luigi's Mansion stands out so much in my mind compared to other games I've recently played, and why it was so enjoyable for me. That feeling of accomplishment, and even amusement, when you start messing with an object just for fun, only to find it rewards you with an item necessary to progress further in the story? Yeah, it really does make this game a joy to play. And it's not just the puzzles and interactions that had me tickled pink. The enemies of Luigi's Mansion come in a variety of shapes, sizes and colour, and every single one of them is bloody adorable. There's your bog standard ghost that will sneak up to Luigi and give him a good walloping, ghosts that will grab a hold of him and refuse to let go, and even banana eating ghosts that will drop peels on the ground which can knock Luigi over. In order to suck up a ghost, you'll need to stun it with the light from Luigi's torch, which will in turn reveal its heart, and then immediately begin sucking it up with the Poltergust 3000. This is accomplished by moving Luigi and the C-stick in the opposite direction the ghost is pulling in. Now, I had a few issues here and there with the controls when trying to capture ghosts, but I don't think it was the game's fault. And I'm mainly going to chalk it up to me just being new to the system, and the fact I was using the wrong controller. It's difficult to judge, of course, given I've never held a GameCube controller and thus don't know how it feels, but I'm sure an Xbox Windows controller, for as versatile as it is, does not substitute for the real thing. Not everything can be blamed on inadequate stand-ins, however, and sadly I wasn't a huge fan of the game's camera at times. Now, for the most part, it does its job perfectly fine. It stays at a reasonable distance from Luigi, and makes sure to keep him centre stage whenever possible, making exploration through the mansion a breeze. Problems arise, however, when you need to aim something at something else, with the something else being to Luigi's side or at an angle to him. A few examples of this are shooting the meteor thingies at the moon in the observatory, and even aiming the bombs during the final boss of the game. You can't rotate the camera around Luigi, so you're stuck with this awkward side angle view to whatever you're aiming at, which makes judging the direction you need to throw in far more difficult than it really needs to be.
I want to die.
Something which isn't much of a problem if you're just casually launching little pieces of rock at a stationary moon, but when you have a giant monstrous Bowser chasing after you and trying to gobble you up, you get a little bit panicky and just a tad frustrated whenever you miss that shot and get chewed up by the boss because of it. Speaking of big bad bosses, I haven't gone into much detail about the portrait ghosts. Besides the regular ghosts that stalk the rooms and halls of this haunted mansion, there are also larger named ghosts that act as bosses in some cases, but more often than not they're just more complicated versions of the regular ghosts. Unlike the generic enemies, however, these ghosts won't be open to showing their hearts when dazzled with light. Instead, you have to either wait for a certain cue for their heart to be revealed, or perform a particular action to reveal it yourself.
What about, I must be able to push. Oh! Oh, we're no longer 69!
The portrait ghosts are one of my favourite aspects of the game. Sure, at times I was a tad confused as to what I had to do to make them vulnerable to attack, but that's what makes Luigi's Mansion so enjoyable to play. Solving problems and thinking outside the box. For example, I was completely stumped as to how to defeat Shivers the butler. I knew I had to light the candles, but once I did so, he'd start charging through the hallway in panic, before disappearing at the end and eventually respawning back where he started. Figuring I had missed a cue somewhere, I tried the same thing over and over, before my poor suffering viewers informed me, he's a ghost. What do ghosts do besides spooking people? They float through walls. It's so obvious when you think about it, but up until now I hadn't really had to deal with enemies disappearing into other rooms, so it just never occurred to me. But while I thought it was a clever mechanic in this case, I didn't particularly enjoy it as I hunted down the 50 boos scattered about the mansion. To get back on track with the story, after Luigi pushes that button in the storage room, which in turn pushes the west wall back, he comes across a poster of a boo behind bars. Sucking up the poster reveals another button, though pressing it may not have been the best decision.
We're gonna do what, oh dear, we're gonna do what we did to your brother. What did they do to my brother?
Upon realizing Luigi is equipped with the Poltergust 3000, King Boo and his minions flee to various parts of the mansion. Gadd reveals it was actually the Boos who released all the portrait ghosts from his gallery, and he tasks Luigi with capturing all 50 of the little buggers before they can cause more havoc. Luckily, he doesn't leave Luigi to wander blindly through the mansion in search of the Boos, and informs the lad that the Game Boy Horror actually has a secret function known as the Boo Radar. If Luigi enters a room inhabited by a hidden Boo, the normally blue light on the Game Boy Horror will begin to flash yellow, becoming increasingly more erratic the closer Luigi gets to said Boo, and then turning red when standing in front of the object or piece of furniture it's hiding in. Shaking or vacuuming the Boo's hiding spot will reveal it, and begin a rather irksome game of cat and mouse. It's similar to sucking up regular ghosts, except the Boos aren't affected by the pull of the Poltergust 3000, and can actually escape through the walls and into another room. The only way you can capture them is by following closely behind, and slowly draining their health with the vacuum. This isn't an issue with Boos who only have a small health pool, and often you can capture those ones before they even have a chance to escape elsewhere. But when you get to the later stages, and have Boos with 300 health, yeah, it gets a little bit repetitive. Boutique here, and yes, they all have adorable names like that, and I love this game even more because of it, spent the entire time I was trying to capture them continuously moving between the artist's studio and the adjacent hallway. And while that doesn't sound too bad, bear in mind that all these boos do is flee from Luigi. They don't really put up a fight, and sometimes I wouldn't even take any health off Boutique before they'd scurry away through a wall once again. Not to mention every time you enter a room with a boo floating around, you're treated to a mini cutscene showing them giggling at Luigi, which if I counted correctly, I watched 14 times while trying to capture this particular boo.
Try me, bitch.
Anyways, back on track. Portrait ghosts you capture will be brought back to Gadd's lab and returned back to their picture frames by way of the Ghost Portrificationizer. The picture frame will come in one of three colours, bronze, silver or gold, depending on how many pearls you collected during the fight, or in the case of area bosses like Chauncey the Ghost Baby, how well you did evading attacks and maintaining your health. Now, I didn't actually realise the picture frame colour was linked to either of those things. I was just happy to make it through the mansion in one piece in most cases. And to be honest, if I was trying to go for all gold portraits, I think I would have lost my rag when it came to one especially irritating boss, Boolossus. There is no other way to put it, this guy is a knobhead. His attacks are easy enough to evade while in his giant form, and even getting him to split into smaller versions of boos isn't a problem either. The issue comes with trying to capture the little buggers before they can reform. You need to freeze them with ice in order to make sucking them up easier, a task not too difficult at first, but once you get down to the last few, they are so evasive it is nearly impossible to hit them. Patience and persistence is definitely key to winning this fight, two things that I sadly don't have in abundance. I did eventually manage to defeat him, but let me tell you, it's a fight I would not want to repeat anytime soon, or make that anytime ever. Eventually, Luigi discovers what happened to his brother. Turns out Mario has been trapped inside a painting of his very own by none other than King Boo. In order to rescue Mario, Luigi will need to find various items that belong to his brother, and then bring them to the fortune teller ghost, Madame Clairvoyeur, who in turn will inform Luigi of the events that will play out in the future. To be honest, she doesn't have much purpose in this game, and she eventually gets sucked up like all the other portrait ghosts, but hey, she's kind of funny to listen to, so I don't mind.
Oh, not again. They're coming. They just keep coming all over the place. It's a good thing you have that Dyson. Oh.
A few more keys, a few more rooms to explore, and a few more boos to suck up, and I eventually made it to the final boss.
Where are you, Mario? Mario! I'm not afraid of you, fool. I fear only that infernal Dyson you carry on your back. Stupid machine. But I am a king among boos, I swear it, I shall fear no mere house cleaning device, he agrees. It's a Dyson. Hang on, there's a picture of Bowser on the wall. What? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the I had to do the bird thing. What? What the fuck?
Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest here. When I finally got to this fight, I wasn't in the best frame of mind to attempt it. By this point, I'd actually been live streaming for well over 3 hours because I was convinced I would soon be wrapping up the game. But of course, I didn't account for how lost I could still get and how much I sucked, or didn't suck in this case, at collecting boos. And so my first attempt at defeating King Boo and his Bowser puppet here didn't go so well.
What do I do? I will suck him up. It's not working. I'm scared.
Suck him up.
Oh, there we go. Oh shit, where'd his head go?
Fucking hell, his head came off.
Oh, come on. Oh, seriously? If I die now, I swear to God, I'm turning this game right off. I am actually turning it off.
Oh.
Are you serious? I died throwing the...
Oh.
The goal is to grab a hold of these bombs the Bowser puppet launches at Luigi and shoot them back at the puppet while it has its mouth open. Doing so will force King Boo out of the puppet, to which you can start sucking him up with the Poltergust 3000. It's really not that difficult to fight, the only challenges being the puppet head shooting ice blasts at Luigi while you attempt to suck up King Boo, and later on the puppet charging recklessly across the platform while its head's on backwards. My only gripe would be not Bowser here being able to get 2 hits for the price of 1. If you manage to get caught out and sucked up into his mouth, he can not only chew you up and spit you back out, but also hit you with a flame attack while you desperately scream at Luigi to get his lard ass up off the floor. Now, for as simple as this fight is and how predictable his attacks are, it's not too difficult to avoid this. I just personally don't appreciate a boss being able to smack me up twice before I can even get back on my feet. I mean, if you're going to do that combo, I'd rather you just did the full 25 points of damage from both attacks in one, rather than making me sit through an extra flame attack I can't even avoid. I eventually got back into the game, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on a brand new day, and managed to avoid all but one attack this time around, so it was definitely a fatigue issue during my first live stream. In all, an incredibly easy final boss battle. A bit of a shame, but I suppose the demographic is kids after all. Anyway, you suck up that mean old King Boo, and given it no longer has a controller, the Bowser puppet falls lifeless to the ground, which for some reason I find incredibly disturbing. I mean, it doesn't just drop like the puppet it is, it actually appears to gasp for air before it collapses, like Shadow of the Colossus style. Luigi brings the portrait of Mario to the ghost portrificationizer so that Gadd can reverse the effects on the poor sod. And then you get a simple but incredibly sweet ending in which Luigi shows just how happy he is to see his brother back safe and sound, and of course 3D.
Mario, are you dead? Oh my god! Me beautiful nose, you have ruined it. Wait, it's playing that theme. Da-da-na-na-na-na. Oh, he's crying. He's either crying with laughter, which is adorable, or he's crying with happiness that he got his brother back. Either way, it's sweet and I love it. Or both, possibly.
And that pretty much sums up Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube. If you wait until after the credits, you'll get a rank based on how well you played, which will in turn affect the size of the house Gadd builds for Luigi with all that money he found lying about the place. It may not be the grandest, but I'll settle for my modest rank C house, thank you. And even if I had failed so spectacularly that I only ended up with a small tent on a hill, I wouldn't mind because I had an absolute blast playing this game. The enemies, the room designs, the interactions, the music and sound effects, it all comes together to make for one delightfully charming and slightly spooky experience. I'm just disappointed it's all over. Yes, there were moments I got frustrated and moments where I wanted to quit entirely and leave it for another day, but they were few and far between. And even if I said I never want to go up against a Boolossus again for as long as I live, I'd definitely consider replaying this game at some point, if only for my own entertainment. I'll just have to get good at fighting that particular boss, I suppose. But yeah, I'm certainly going to miss messing around with objects and being pleasantly surprised when a key flies out, listening to the silly voices of the characters as well as doing my own impressions of them.
That is right, n'est-ce pas? It is eternal. You say that only one of my creations is left? But this cannot be! Zot alors!
And of course, all the secrets Luigi's Mansion hides well for those with enough curiosity to find them. The flower in the garden that can be watered multiple times as the story goes on. A seemingly uninteresting mouse hole that, once scanned, will teleport Luigi to a hidden room full of money. Or even the fact mirrors can send you back to the foyer. But you know what I'm going to miss most of all? Listening to Luigi shakily hum the theme of the game as he tentatively shuffles through dark and dreary corridors and rooms, trusty Dyson vacuum cleaner in hand, ready to suck up any ghosts that might pop out and spook him. Shout out to supporters Klaxon, Thomas Hinton, Jeffrey Thomas, Ray Zack, Mr. Zugador, Ross Ward, Poplio the Destroyer, Merendor, Trevor, James Townsend, Artemis the Falcon, Hayley Thomas, Chris Morris, and Ross Hextall. Thank you so much once again, guys, for another month of support. If it's on YouTube or Patreon, you are all just awesome. If you are someone who can't afford to support on Patreon or YouTube, but you just want to keep supporting me in general and the channel, watching the videos, leaving a like, commenting, sharing it around, that really does help me and it helps the channel grow, and yeah, I can't thank you enough for that. Hope you guys really enjoyed this review. I was honestly surprised by how much I enjoyed playing Luigi's Mansion, especially given I normally tend to avoid Nintendo like the plague. I don't know why, I'm just weird. But I think I'm definitely going to check out some more GameCube games, so yeah. Hope you all had fun watching, and I'll see you guys later, so bye bye!